A white police officer pulled over a black woman for no reason, unaware that she was the director of the FBI. This story not only exposes the abuse of power but also sparks a powerful movement for justice and equality. Thank you for stopping by. If you find this story compelling, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your family and friends, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more meaningful stories like this. A sleek black SUV glided through the quiet suburban streets, its polished surface reflecting the soft glow of the streetlights. Olivia Lawson, 47 years old, a powerful black woman, had just wrapped up a long and exhausting day at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. As the director of the FBI, one of the most powerful and respected positions in American law enforcement, Olivia had proven her brilliance through a series of high-profile cases. But at this moment, all she wanted was to get home, enjoy dinner, and unwind with her favorite book. As she neared her neighborhood, the flickering lights of a few passing cars reflected in her rearview mirror. Just as she thought she was almost home, a sudden burst of flashing red and blue lights illuminated her cabin, the unmistakable signal of a police stop. Staying calm, Olivia pulled over to the side of the road, preparing herself for the unexpected situation ahead. A white police officer around 38 years old, named Adam Crawford, stepped out of his patrol car, his posture exuding an air of authority and challenge. He approached without a greeting, his voice cold and commanding. "You need to pull over for security reasons." His tone was clipped and dismissive, his gaze sweeping over Olivia and her luxury vehicle with barely concealed suspicion. Olivia remained composed. She sat upright, her eyes meeting the officer's with an unreadable expression. A faint smile touched her lips, but it did little to hide her underlying irritation. "Security. Is there something wrong with me or my vehicle?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp. "Hand over your registration and driver's license," now Adam ordered, ignoring her question. Olivia had no intention of escalating the situation unnecessarily. She opened the glove compartment, retrieved the requested documents, and handed them over. Adam barely glanced at them before retreating to his patrol car. As she waited, Olivia couldn't help but reflect on the situation. She had experienced this kind of treatment before, being disregarded, even discriminated against, simply because of her skin color. Even as the director of the FBI, she was not immune. But no matter what, she refused to tolerate injustice, no matter how small. After a few moments, Adam returned, his expression colder, his stance more aggressive. "Miss Lawson, I need you to present additional identification. Right now," he demanded, his tone harsher than before. Olivia raised an eyebrow, showing no signs of fear. "My vehicle registration and driver's license are valid. I have committed no violation. Why exactly do I need to provide additional identification? Can you explain why this request is necessary?" Adam crossed his arms, a smirk playing at his lips as he looked at her with thinly veiled disdain. "You look suspicious. Black women like you don't typically drive cars like this." A slow burn of anger ignited within Olivia, but she remained poised. "Suspicious. Do you have any evidence to support that claim?" she asked, her voice unwavering yet pointed. Adam shrugged, his eyes flicking over her expensive coat with a condescending sneer. "Doesn't matter. I have the authority to check. If you don't hand over another form of ID, I can take you to the station." Olivia gripped the steering wheel tightly. When she spoke, her words were as firm and unyielding as steel. "Officer, your demand is completely unlawful. I have provided the required documentation. Unless you have a legitimate reason, I will not be presenting anything else." Adam narrowed his eyes, his expression darkening with hostility. "Well, don't tell me how to do my job, lady. People like you shouldn't be testing my authority. People like you." The words sent a chill through Olivia. She had heard this phrase too many times before, and each time it cut just as deep. Holding his gaze, she refused to back down. "I am not testing your authority. I am reminding you of the responsibility that comes with it. You are abusing your power, and if you don't stop, this will not end well for you." Adam scoffed, a mocking smirk tugging at his lips. "Trouble. Who do you think you are, threatening me? You have no idea how things work around here." Not wanting the situation to escalate, Olivia remained patient, keeping her tone calm yet firm. "I know the law better than anyone, Officer Crawford. And I also know that what you're doing is completely out of line." Adam took a step back, but instead of backing down, he became even more aggressive. "If you don't cooperate, I can arrest you right now." Olivia took a deep breath, locking eyes with him, her resolve as solid as steel. This wasn't the situation she wanted, but she knew that in this moment, calmness and logic were her strongest weapons. "You have no legal reason to arrest me, and you know it," Olivia stated firmly. "I suggest you think carefully before you cross the line." Adam glared at Olivia, his eyes filled with hostility and defiance. For someone like him, being challenged by a black woman was utterly unacceptable. He clenched his jaw, hatred flickering in his eyes, ready for the confrontation to escalate again. Suddenly, he pulled out his gun, pressing it against Olivia's chest, his face tense, as if bracing himself for his next move. Olivia didn't flinch. She stood her ground, her gaze unwavering as she stared him down, fully aware that this battle had only just begun. Adam Crawford's fingers tightened around his holster, tension clear on his face. His breath came in short, irritated gasps, but he was unable to shake Olivia's unnerving composure. "You think you have the right to talk back to me?" Adam barked, his voice low and laced with menace. "I don't have time for games. If you don't hand over your ID right now, I won't hesitate to use force." Olivia didn't budge. She remained seated in the driver's seat, her gaze locked onto him with unwavering determination. "Officer Crawford, I have provided all the necessary documents as required by law. If you cannot give me a legitimate reason for this demand, I will not be handing over anything else." Adam stepped closer, his face reddening with rage. "Are you challenging me? Do you think you have the right to tell me how to do my job? You can't lecture me about the law, Olivia." He spat her name with contempt, but she only returned his glare with piercing coldness. "You can't force me to comply just because you wear a badge, and I won't let you provoke me." The weight of Adam's authority pressed down on him, feeding his need for dominance. "If you don't cooperate, I'll make sure you regret it," he snarled. Olivia remained impossibly calm. "Regret? Are you sure? I know my rights, and I won't let you continue to abuse them." Her warning did nothing to deter him. In a fit of rage, he slammed his hand against the car door. "I don't think you can get out of here that easily. I'm the police, I have the power." Olivia met his gaze, completely unshaken. She pushed open her car door, standing her ground. "If you want me to step out, do it by the book. Otherwise, I'll call someone with real authority." Adam let out a bitter laugh, but it wasn't one of confidence, it dripped with contempt and intimidation. "Call who? You really think you can walk away from this?" Olivia didn't respond, but calmly made a phone call. Her voice was soft yet firm. "This is Olivia Lawson. I am being pulled over by an officer abusing his authority. I need the police chief here immediately." She provided her location to the person on the other end before hanging up and turning to face Adam. "The chief is on his way. If I were you, I'd think very carefully about my next move." Adam stood frozen for a few seconds, his gun still firmly in his grip. But this time there was a change in his eyes, a flicker of confusion, perhaps even a hint of unease. "What kind of game are you playing?" he asked, but his voice lacked the confidence it had before. Olivia simply gave a faint smile, but there was no fear in her gaze. When she spoke, her voice was calm yet commanding. "This isn't a game, Officer Crawford. This is reality, and you will face the consequences of your actions." Adam remained where he was, his lips pressed tightly together. The aggression that had once burned in his eyes was now replaced with hesitation. He was beginning to realize that, for once, things were no longer in his control. No matter how hard he tried to hide it, the truth was closing in on him, and Olivia knew he could feel it too. She stood tall, unwavering, her eyes locked onto his without a trace of doubt. In that tense moment of silence, the sharp wail of a police siren pierced the heavy air. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness, reflecting in Adam's eyes an undeniable sign that the power he once wielded was slipping away. Olivia took a deep breath, her fear completely gone. She had seen too many men like Crawford, men who abused their power to oppress others without ever being held accountable. But this time was different. This time, justice would not be ignored. The police chief's car sped toward them, its headlights slicing through the night as if exposing every hidden truth. Olivia knew this moment was unlike the others. This time, the truth would come to light, and there would be no escape for Crawford. The police vehicle screeched to a stop, tires skidding against the pavement before coming to a forceful halt. The door swung open, and out stepped a middle-aged man with an air of authority, his face lined with the marks of time and experience. This was Police Chief Tyler Monroe, a man who had dedicated nearly 3 decades to law enforcement, witnessing his fair share of tense situations. But what he saw before him now made his blood boil. He strode swiftly toward Olivia Lawson's car, where Officer Adam Crawford still stood, his gun in hand, his cold stare locked onto Olivia. The tension in the air was thick, and Monroe could feel the hostility radiating from Crawford. But what enraged him the most was Olivia's unshakable composure. She wasn't afraid, she wasn't trembling, she simply stood there, firm and unwavering, as if she already knew justice was on its way. It took Monroe only a second to assess the situation. A lower-ranking officer aiming a gun at a black federal agent, an unforgivable offense. His years of service had taught him one thing. There were lines that should never be crossed, and Crawford had gone far beyond them. Without a moment's hesitation, Monroe's authoritative voice cut through the night like thunder. "Officer Crawford." Monroe roared, his voice echoing through the empty street. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Drop your weapon. That's an order." For a brief second, time seemed to freeze. Crawford flinched, his grip on the gun beginning to waver. Olivia didn't take her eyes off him, ready to react at any moment. But she knew the moment Monroe arrived, the balance of power had shifted. This time it was Crawford who would have to face the consequences. Adam Crawford spun around, his face drained of color, eyes wide with shock. His breathing turned ragged, and in that instant, the arrogance and confidence he once carried vanished entirely, replaced by raw panic. His hand trembled under the weight of the gun, as if it had suddenly become too heavy to hold. Finally, with a slow, reluctant motion, he lowered his weapon, but even then, he clung desperately to the last shred of authority he had left. "Chief Keefe, I was just doing my job," Crawford stammered, his voice faltering, as if even he couldn't believe his own excuse. Olivia Lawson remained standing, unmoved. She wasn't angry, nor was she afraid. Only a sharp determination gleamed in her eyes. She had seen far too many cases like this, officers abusing their authority, believing they could act however they pleased without facing the consequences. But today Crawford was wrong. Slowly she turned to Chief Monroe, her gaze unwavering and filled with undeniable resolve. "Thank you for arriving in time, Chief Monroe," she said, her voice low but commanding. "I believe we need to launch an immediate investigation into this officer's misconduct. This isn't just a mistake, this is a serious abuse of power." Monroe looked at Olivia more closely, his eyes widening as he realized that the woman standing before him was not just an ordinary citizen. His breath caught for a brief moment, and his voice dropped, laced with both astonishment and the weight of the situation's gravity. "Olivia Lawson," he said slowly, as if needing a moment to confirm his own thoughts. Then, after a brief pause, he locked eyes with her, his expression shifting into pure disbelief. "You're the FBI director." The air around them thickened instantly. Crawford stood frozen, his entire body stiff as stone. Shock washed over his face like a cold wave, and he stared at Olivia as if desperately hoping this was some cruel joke. "FBI director," Crawford repeated, his voice catching in his throat. What do you mean?" He believed he was in complete control of the situation, but now he realized that the black woman he had been aiming his gun at was not just some powerless civilian. She was one of the most powerful figures in law enforcement, and he had made an irreversible mistake. Olivia nodded, her eyes never leaving the disgraced officer before her. "That's right. I'm Olivia Lawson, director of the FBI." And this officer has engaged in misconduct, threatening me with a firearm without any justified reason. Adam Crawford was now in a full-blown panic. His face turned pale, sweat beading on his forehead. I didn't know," he stammered, feeling as though he had trapped himself in an inescapable disaster. Ryder took a deep breath, his anger becoming evident. "Matthews, do you even realize what you've done? Your actions don't just violate department procedures, they could have serious legal consequences. Do you understand that?" Adam Crawford struggled to find an excuse, his voice shaking. "Chief, I didn't know who she was. I was just following my routine inspection process." Olivia remained unfazed, responding with a calm yet firm tone. "I provided all legally required identification, yet you continued demanding unnecessary documents and acted aggressively. When I refused, you began insulting me and even pointed a gun at me. Is that the inspection process you're referring to?" Adam Crawford fell silent, unable to meet Olivia's piercing gaze. Monroe looked at him, disappointment written all over his face. "Matthews," Chief Monroe said sternly, "I'm launching a full investigation into your actions. For now, return to the station and file a report on this incident. You will be held accountable." Adam Crawford hesitated for a moment, then finally bowed his head, silently walking back to his vehicle and driving away. Ryder turned to Olivia, his voice softer but filled with regret. "Olivia, I'm sorry for what happened. This officer's behavior was unacceptable. I promise to conduct a thorough investigation and ensure justice is served." Olivia met his gaze, her expression serious, yet there was an unmistakable coldness in her eyes. "Thank you, Chief Monroe. But I hope you're not just doing this because of me. I hope you do it for every person who has ever suffered under officers who abuse their power." Ryder nodded, his eyes now filled with determination. "I'll do everything in my power to make sure you're not disappointed, Olivia." Olivia gave a slight nod, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. She knew this battle was far from over, and her resolve had never been stronger. In the following days, this incident quickly became the center of public attention. The story of Officer Adam Crawford's abuse of power against Olivia Lawson sparked outrage across the community. Crawford's misconduct struck a deep and painful chord, making it impossible for the public to remain silent. An internal investigation was launched immediately. Police Chief Tyler Monroe wasted no time gathering evidence from dashboard cameras and audio recordings, exposing Crawford's blatant racism. The community's anger erupted. To prevent being swept away by the storm of public opinion, the chief held a press conference, openly admitting fault and pledging to handle the case with fairness and transparency. Olivia Lawson was not just fighting for her own justice, she was fighting for a fair and accountable policing system. Within a week, Crawford was fired and permanently banned from law enforcement. At the same time, a series of major reforms were enacted: mandatory anti-racism training for all officers, surveillance cameras installed in patrol cars, and the establishment of a hotline for citizens to report misconduct. But Olivia didn't stop there. She pushed for these reforms on a national level, emphasizing that justice must be upheld for everyone, regardless of race or social status. Olivia Lawson's story does not end as just a personal tragedy or an isolated event. It serves as a mirror reflecting a harsher reality, a wake-up call to the injustices still present in our society. It is a reminder that no matter who you are or where you stand, you cannot turn a blind eye to injustice. Justice is not a privilege, it is a fundamental right for all. And when one person is stripped of that right, it is not just their loss, it is a crack in the foundation of fairness that we all depend on. Imagine if every case like Olivia's were forgotten, if we remained silent in the face of wrongdoing. What would happen then? A society without justice becomes a place where the powerful manipulate and the vulnerable have nowhere to turn. But we can change that. Looking back on this story, we must ask ourselves what truly matters. What can we do today to prevent similar tragedies? And in 5 years, in 2030 and beyond, will our society have progressed? Or will it remain stagnant, held back by prejudice and injustice? The answer does not lie in the hands of those in power, it lies within us. It is in our actions, our words, and the choices we make every day. When you witness wrongdoing, Will you stay silent or speak out? When you see someone treated unfairly, will you look away or stand up for them? Justice cannot defend itself. It requires brave individuals willing to fight, to question, and to demand change. Right now, we can take small but meaningful actions. Speak up when you see injustice. Spread kindness and educate yourself and those around you about human rights and the value of fairness. A small action today can lay the groundwork for significant change in the future. Most importantly, do not let fear or indifference rob us of our ability to make a difference. And what about you? What do you think of Olivia Lawson's story? If you were in her shoes, what would you do? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice matters, and it might inspire others. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing meaningful stories like this. This story is entirely fictional, created to raise awareness about important social issues. We aim to emphasize personal and collective responsibility, the pursuit of justice, and the importance of treating all individuals with dignity and respect, regardless of race, status, or background. We strongly oppose all forms of violence, discrimination, prejudice, and injustice in society. The events depicted in this story are meant to be thought-provoking and educational, encouraging viewers to reflect on moral values, fairness, and compassion. Viewers should consider their emotional sensitivity before watching. If you feel the content may be distressing, please take a moment to decide before proceeding. We hope this story contributes to meaningful discussions and helps build a fairer, more compassionate society.